Om Om Sri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sadha Shiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Lokashankaram Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vitvaram Om Shanti 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 Om Bhadram Karne Vishunayama Devaha Bhadram Pashye Makshavirya Jatraha Sthirairangai Tashtuvagum Sasdanubihi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vriddashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishvavedaha Swasti nastarkshyo Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatirdadatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In our journey to the second chapter of Prashnopanishad, after having purified our body through austerities, purified our mind through brahmacharya, and intellect is strengthened by our shraddha, the student like us is ready to ask the question or understand the question also. The question that was put forward by Bhargava was, how does prana express to sustain creation, and which is its greatest expression? His question was about the individual prana in an individual, but the response from the teacher started with explaining how this prana is the entire speech, mind, ear, etc., all expressions of the body are all only prana. It is through the fivefold modifications of prana that the body is enlivened, and therefore it is the greatest. The eology of prana is the place where we are today. And before we get into the actual mantras brahmanas that we are going to study today, I will ask Chandruji to give the summary. Next slide, please.
Hari Om Acharya. Without repeating what you have already said as a preliminary introduction, straight away go to 2.7 and 2.8, which continue the eulogy of the senses and mind to prana. Having recognized that prana is a sentiency which runs through the entire, whether it is the right or it is a sentiency part, it is the same thing. It doesn't matter. It is energy and matter through which prana runs. And without this sentiency, we will not be able to do any actions. We will not be alive also. In 2.7, prana is extolled as Prajapati, the Lord of all creatures. Prana alone is born in the wombs, and prana alone is also reborn, birth after birth, which are caused by our own actions. Now, the creatures offer objects, emotions, and thoughts as their oblations. And when we see Shankaracharya's comment on this, he emphasizes that it is the same prana which comes birth after birth, again and again. The same prana runs through Hiranyagarbha, or actually is Hiranyagarbha. And it's the same prana which comes in fetuses. And the child which is born is alive. Sentiency does not change. It prevents everything. Matter might change from time to time. Prana impulse actions. These actions could be immediate or delayed, as the results would be. And it's the delayed actions which lead to rebirth, where we have to, I can't say suffer, we have to go through the punyas and papas, which under birth we have to, what is the word I'm looking for? We have to experience. But the problem is our identification with BMI, which prevents us from recognizing prana as something other than our own body. We are not able to recognize that prana is something which runs through all the bodies, all the objects that we are seeing, and also the cosmic forces. Once we realize that, then our life will become much simpler. In my own analogy, Sariji, the only time man ever sunders from something is at birth. When the umbilical cord is cut, he becomes separate from his mother. For that, he takes the help of a doctor or a nurse or a midwife. The same effort, if he puts in calling the help of Bhagavan in this work, Bhagavan will do the thundering from the identification with BMI, and we would be able to then recognize prana as a single force which runs throughout the world, and there will not be even any conflict with anyone else. When I recognize the same prana in me, with the same prana in you, and also the prana in sun and the prana in moon. And this takes the step of gaining the knowledge for going to that in that direction. In 2.8, it is like the analogy that we do. When we do a yajna, we offer oblations through Agni. Agni carries the oblations to gods. As a matter of respect, we say Agni carries the oblations first to the Pitrus. This Pitru is what we confuse that along with body. Pitru means matter, die. And these offerings to Pitru would always mean that we are not able to recognize that this prana also is carrying the oblations to the gods. Once we realize and understand, then we will know that there is no difference between the prana action in this particular instance. And we will be able to identify that prana is the essence, and prana is also the energy in all the actions that happens in this world. One of the problems that I had in this particular lecture was, the summary would normally mean that you are able to take out some parts and then draw out some essence and then present it as summary. After hearing it 4 times, I did not know what to drop and I did not know what to bring. So I thought maybe I will take every 4th line or 5th line of the talk and make it as a summary, which did not also make sense to me. So what I have tried to present is a very brief summary of what I have understood. But I would request all my friends here that it is just not easy to understand last week's session. Every single line had a meaning and a purpose. And at the end of it, I know I still recognize prana as the most important sentient source of all, which is spread through everywhere. Right from chapter 1, this is the theme we are adopting. But in each mantra, we are finding that there is a different aspect to this in the form of theology activity. I thank you for the opportunity to present what is really a very unsatisfactory summary even for me. But unfortunately, that will be very easy. Hari Om.
Hari Om Chandriji. It was very satisfactory. I mean, you have covered all the essential points. Very good summary. There is a difference between chapter 1 and chapter 2. If you analyze, in chapter 1, the starting point was Prajapati. This Saguna Brahma, actually. In chapter 2, the starting point is Prana. And like you said, it says Prana is Prajapati. So the difference is like this. In chapter 1, where all the students who were Saguna Brahma Upasakas, they had to be reassured that that Saguna Brahman to whom they were praying to itself has become the entire universe and is responsible for the individual and is also responsible for the actions, is also responsible for the results, is also responsible for the samsara, the cycle of progeny creation. In this chapter, since the question pertains to prana, which the student had asked with respect to an individual, the teacher is elevating the intellect of the student to rise above Saguna Brahma. But he is not doing it directly saying there is something above Saguna Brahma, because that will shatter our faith. So what he is trying to tell all of us and the 6 students who are present through this Upanishadic chapter is to give a veiled hint that there is something higher than the Saguna Brahman to whom we were praying all this time. But without decrying that Saguna Brahman, which is Ishvara, which is our Ishtadevata, etc., he says this prana itself is acting as those devatas for you. And not only as devatas, but they are also responsible for the entire creation cycle that I described in chapter 1. And also to the progeny creation, which I described in chapter 1. And also the essence of your own existence today as an individual. That is how this chapter is unfolding. So what it is doing is twofold. It is elevating the intellect to think something beyond your Ishta Devata, which is Ishvara, and also to dive deeper into your own individuality, that it is not exactly what you perceive as you. But the entire job is done so subtly because the moment somebody presents a conflicting thought to our mind and intellect, the first action we do is reject it. It cannot be true, right? If you have a notion that somebody is bad and somebody else comes and tells you, no, he's a good person, you say that can be true. First thing we will say is that's not true or that can't be true. So the Upanishad does not want to confront the existing belief of all of us and the students. The Upanishad is trying to do this very, very subtly. The reason is our intellect has to be convinced that there is a pointer above Ishvara and there is a pointer deeper within us, which we call as individuality. Today in this world, we all know our individuality is our ability to express. I can see, I can think, I can feel. This is how we express our individuality, correct? We also have a particular type of feelings, particular type of thoughts, particular type of experiences. Very unique. Whatever I see, feel, and think, nobody else can feel and see and think. And not only that, this individuality, we are also able to communicate it to each other and differentiate. But the Upanishad is telling no, behind all this capability that you are expressing as a glorious expression of your individuality, like Chandruji pointed out very clearly, there is a unifying factor behind it. And when you touch that unifying factor, you will find that all the differences cease. That same unifying factor which is in you is the unifying factor in this entire creation cosmos, is inside and outside. And carrying that thought process forward, the way the Upanishad suggests is I, the individual whom I am thinking I am today, which is represented by my mind, intellect, and my karmendriyas and jnanendriyas. That is what we think we are, right, today. They themselves are praying to prana, admitting that prana is superior to them. It is gently telling our own intellect to think along that line. We have to say that when we are eulogizing, you must say, I am eulogizing that prana, which is Atman in me, which is Brahman in this entire creation. And Atman in me is nothing other than Brahman in this entire creation. And therefore, I am eulogizing. So now, the same Brahmana that you studied till now, you must change the perspective, saying, I am saying this to prana. Then you will get closer to what the Upanishad wants you to think. That meditative approach to this Upanishad will open up the door of this Upanishad for us. If we try to say, Indriyas had a fight with prana, they said they agreed, it's happening third person. Third person Indriya, second person prana, and I am watching it. No. You are that prana, and you are the Indriyas also, energized by that prana. And as Indriyas, you are now admitting that prana is the one which is essentially me. That is what is meant to be done in this Brahmana. That meditative part, nobody will reveal unless we explain it correctly to us. We can study this entire Upanishad as a wonderful treatise of philosophy. And we can definitely present it to all of us and others outside as a great exposition of our thinking and thought process, and regale people with the depth of knowledge that is contained. But all that is useless unless you say that I am that prana who has become this Indriyas, and as Indriyas, I have to give up my superiority complex that I exist and understand it is prana that is actually the true me in me. Jiva Brahma Aikyam is indicated in every line of this Upanishad, but very subtly. It has to be subtle because otherwise our intellect, as I told you, will resist it. And because we are in Kali Yuga, Acharyas have to even open up that path of thinking for us to actually realize what is it that the Upanishad is telling. Otherwise, we'll gloss over it like many Westerners did without even getting a clue as to what is it that is being presented here. इन्द्रस्त्वं प्राणतेजसा रुद्रोऽसि परिरक्षिताः त्वमन्तरिक्षे चरसि सूर्यस्तं ज्योतिषां पतिः इन्द्रः इन्द्र त्वं thou प्राणः ओ प्राण तेजसा fiery prowess रुद्रः रुद्र or Shiva Asi are thou, Paridakshitaha protector, Tvam thou, Antarikshe in the interstitial space, Charasi moves about, Suryaha the sun, Tvam thou, Jyotisham of all luminaries, Patihi Lord. O Prana, the Lord Indra of all energy, thou art Rudra in prowess and protector. Thou movest in the sky. Thou art the sun, the Lord of all life. This is the eulogy of that prana. How is it being eulogized? It says you are not just prana, but you are the many things that are being pointed out. In Vedanta, there are two kind of definitions that are used. One is called Swarupa Lakshanam. Lakshanam means definition. Swarupa Lakshanam is to define something by its intrinsic properties. I am looking at one person in this video, okay, behind whom there is Shankaracharya and also Pujya Gurudev. Did you all find out who am I talking about? Just raise your hand if you found it out. Good. Now, this is called indirect reference, meaning I am not referencing the person directly, but I am giving an indication as to what is behind them. And we get an indirect reference to the person. Now, let us assume that Anita ji moved away from her room and moved into another room in tomorrow's session. And I ask you, do you recall how we identified Anita ji? And you all will say we identified Anita ji because there was a picture of Pujya Gurudev and Shankaracharya behind her. Right? She's looking back to see if it is there or not. Okay, good. So, how did we find out? By referencing something that is not permanent. Anita ji was permanent through every webinar because she is attending every webinar. But the picture of the room from which she attends need not be as permanent as herself. She might always switch. She may be in a different city. She may be in a conference somewhere. She may be sitting outside. She may use a phone and have a connection from the balcony. We don't know. When all that happens, suddenly we don't know Anita, is it? No, we know Anita because we got the Tatastha Lakshana, meaning the indirect reference or indirect definition of Anita ji. We got it through the pointers of a temporary thing. The trouble with temporary thing is that they come and go. So what we will do is collect many such temporary things, pull them together, and then give a pointer to that particular object which is not directly defined. Brahman is something that cannot be directly defined. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam are also pointers only. They are called Swarupa pointers because that Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam Brahman is not going to be found outside of Brahman. Therefore, we call it as Swarupa Lakshana. But it is also a pointer only to the truth. Okay. It is not the absolute definition of Brahman. Brahman is indefinable. If you could define it, then you have to stand outside of it and define it. So this Satyam Jnanam Anantam is Swarupa Lakshanam. Tatastha Lakshanam is Indrastvam, Rudrostvam, Parirakshita, Antariksho Charasi, Suryastvam, Jyotisham Pati. These are all indirect reference to that same Brahman. Here, that prana is actually indicated as Brahman, but directly not called as Brahman. So, prana here is the intrinsic property of Brahman, and it is also a pointer to Brahman. That prana expresses as Lord Indra of all energy. Indra here represents not just Indra, it represents Brahmaji. That particular prana expresses as Rudra in his prowess when he is withdrawing the entire creation, Shivaji. That prana, Brahman, expressing as prana, expresses as the protector Vishnu also. That particular prana is the one which is moving in the interstitial space as the sun. That Brahman, which is prana, is the Lord of all luminaries, all things that are bright. The Lord of it, the power behind that is that prana, and that prana is Brahman. All this we have to infer from this one single Brahmana itself. And each one is a pointer to the nature of that Brahman. It is not tied to one single object, but it pervades everything. And each one is conflicting with each other. Rudra who dissolves cannot be Brahma, the creator. So if you say that prana is destroying, then is prana, how can prana be the creator at the same time? You will get into a conflict, then you will get the idea that it is beyond even what we perceive as creation, sustenance, and dissolution. Does it make a little sense when I guide you through those points? Let's see a little bit more of the Brahmana, things will become clear. Next slide, please. We were told in chapter 1, like Chandruji very precisely pointed out, that this prana is the total energy, which is the prana that was described in chapter 1, which itself has manifested as the sun. But in this particular chapter, one more aspect of this prana is being told to us, that it is not just the prana that was created by Prajapati, but it is the prana that even became Prajapati. Meaning now the prana is being elevated, as I said, to the level of Brahman. In earlier chapter, it was an effect of Prajapati, that is how we saw it, as energy. But as that which impels even Prajapati, the same prana has become elevated now. This is how Jiva gets elevated to Atman, Atman gets elevated to Brahman. So you have to change the reference of understanding, then that elevation will automatically take place. And what is the reference now? It is the non-dual factor behind creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the world. This creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the world is a pointer to Saguna Brahma, Ishvara. Ishvara became Brahmaji, Ishvara became Shiva, Ishvara became Vishnu to create, sustain, and dissolve this entire universe. Indrastvam means prana is Indra. Indra is the presiding deity of the mind. And therefore, our mind creates our world, correct? So, in effect, all creative faculties become active in us only when our minds function. That means only when the total cosmic mind is functioning, then only everything becomes active. Otherwise, nothing will happen. So here Indrastvam is to indicate that he is Brahmaji at the cosmic level and he is the mind at our individual level. And who are we talking about? Prana. Which prana? Not that prana which was created by Prajapati as an energy principle, but it is that which impelled even Prajapati to create. See how subtly the Upanishad is raising our thought level. If we literally read this Upanishad, we'll get stuck with a confusion. How did that prana, which was the child of Prajapati, became the father of Prajapati? Conceptually, I'm talking. Finished. At this Brahmana, we will close the Upanishad and go home because nobody is there to explain to us how to understand these concepts. Luckily, Mahatmas have guided us to say, think. Why is Upanishad using such a convoluted logic? It could have right away told you this is the hierarchy. The reason it does not want you to tie yourself to a hierarchy is that in a hierarchy, there is a definite position for various objects. This is higher, this is lower, this comes next, this came first, etc., etc. But in this pervasive understanding of Brahman, there is no hierarchy. So in order to laterally spread your thoughts to everything and vertically spread your thought towards the entire creation and whatever you perceive in this world, Upanishad is employing such complicated methods of rendering the knowledge to us. Rudrosi, prana is Rudra. Rudra is responsible for the destruction or dissolution of the world. Prana alone functioning as Rudra is dissolving, which withdraws the projected world back into the state of dense tamas during pralaya. Whenever there is pralaya, the worlds are withdrawn into its nascent creative matrix, which is again Brahmaji himself. Parirakshita, the one who protects. Prana as the protector functions as Vishnu to nourish and sustain this projected Jagat. This is what history understood. Next slide, please. Svam antarikshe charasi suryastam. Recalling that Prajapati himself as Prana became the sun deity in chapter 1, the Upanishad assert that that sun deity which we defined in chapter 1 is that which is actually working in three lokas, which is called as interstitial space. What is interstitial space? Totally, there are 7 lokas, which are all mind-born states of Brahmaji. Okay. The 3 lokas, Bhuloka, which is the earth, Bhuvarloka, the world of the mains, the forefathers, and Suvarloka, the Swargaloka, which is the world of divine being. They are all relatively subtler than each other, meaning Bhuvarloka is gross and Swargaloka is very subtle. The Swargaloka pervades the world of the main and the world of the earth. So those beings which are actually existing in Swargaloka, which is Devatas, can pervade the Pitraloka, which is the Bhuvarloka, and also the earth, which is the earthly existence. And when they pervade, we cannot see them because they are subtle. And these three lokas are the ones which are actually withdrawn when Brahmaji goes to sleep every night. Meaning, he loses his identity with these three kinds of thoughts. So, the moment we go to sleep, we lose identity with our gross waking world, our dream world, and our existence as an individual, correct? Gross individual. But we are there as subtle Atma, but we don't know it. Only when you go to that particular loka where you can identify yourself with that thought, then you will recognize it. Since we have identified ourselves only with the waker, we go in and the dreamer at most, and after that we lose all identification in deep sleep. After that, nothing exists for us. But Brahmaji withdraws himself from the three worlds, but he is remaining in the other four worlds. I mean, whatever was thinking is still functioning in the four worlds, the other four worlds, which are available amongst the seven. And the sun that we are recognizing today belongs to only these three worlds, Bhu, Bhuvar, and Suvar, as sun. So the sun also is withdrawn during the Pralaya. And sun again is recreated when the Brahmaji wakes up and this whole thing is recalled. Like we wake up and recall our memories and start the world fresh again. Same way Brahmaji also, only thing the time it takes for Brahmaji in human years is almost like Chaturyugas. Every Chaturyuga there is a cycle of pralaya and then he goes to sleep, he wakes up, then the whole thing is recreated. But the sun does not stop with only that which is expressing in these three worlds. That's only an expression of that sun principle. But Jyotisham Patihi, you prana have become the lord of all luminaries, meaning everything that is bright. What is bright? That which is visible to us independently is bright. There are only two things that are independently visible to us. One is the physical sunlight, which we can experience. We can also experience knowledge. So, brightness represents both knowledge as well as the luminary aspect of all gross bodies. At the gross level, we call it luminary, and at the subtle level, we call it as knowledge. So you are that Jyotishan Patihi, meaning you are the embodiment of that knowledge in the subtle world, which is actually an experience by itself of those subtle worlds, and the gross experiences facilitated by sunlight in the three worlds that are interstitial worlds. Prana has pervaded all bright things like fire, lamps, etc., and also all knowledge that can be divined in this world through our inner instrument, mind, intellect of the Jivas. Again, see the depth to which the Upanishad is making us think. It says, dive deep into the Jiva, recognize that your existence, which you claim, is because of your expressions through your karmendriya, mind, and intellects, etc. That existence, that knowledge that you exist, is because of that principle called Atman in you, which is the real you. Don't give too much importance to your expression, give higher importance to your existence. Expressions can go up and down. Today, a good day, everything is fantastic. Another bad day, everything is bad. That's an expression. Like you are expressing through your individual body, the world is expressing through the collective body called world. Like you have a bad day and bad mood, world also will have a bad day and bad mood. Corona will come and wipe many people out. The power of that world is larger because it's got a larger body. You have a small body, so you can at most control only your hands and legs. That's all you can do. But the principle is the same. When you go through ups and downs, please understand the world is also going through ups and downs. Nothing is permanent in this because everything is changed. That which goes down will come up. That which comes up will go down. Do not get agitated by the ups and downs because by that you are connecting yourself with the Rai principle of this creation. Instead, attach yourself to that prana principle and thereby elevate your thinking to that which is beyond even Prajapati, the creator, which is Brahma. The only means by which we can elevate our thinking is to attach ourselves to that which is more permanent in us than the less permanent in us. Do not attach yourself with transients. Attach yourself with that which is stabler. There is a degree of relative stability. I agree with that. But you must also look for that absolute stable thing in you which is existing. And Upanishad is the only proof that it is there and you can gain it. Otherwise, we'll never know about it. Through this Shravanam, you are getting in touch with your true self. And through Mananam, you will realize doubtlessly that exactly is you. The rest of it is all this ups and down world is only a mythical play of Maya, including your own moods. Okay, I got it, I did not get it is also Maya. Please remember that. So you have to drop even worry is that I'm not getting it, even worry is that I did not understand, even worry is that it's so complex. All those worries, set it aside. They're all part of the same Maya which you're trying to overcome. At this point of time, you don't have to worry about that Maya anymore because we have declutched ourselves from such thinking now at this moment. By the words that I am uttering, you have declutched yourself also. But you won't accept it because habitually you'll fall back. The moment the session is over, you'll start thinking, no, no, he did say that, but I can't believe him. It's okay, doesn't matter. Whether you believe or not, it is Maya only. So, what is the true you? That prana which you are experiencing in you is an expression of that Brahman in you. Understand, it is a better expression of Brahman than the materialistic tendencies in you. If you attach yourself to materialistic tendencies, it's called a downward spiral. You'll go through this Pitraloka cycle and birth, death, etc. But if you attach yourself to the higher spiral, which is prana related, you will elevate yourself to that level of comprehension of that Brahman. So lifestyle has to change. You have to now make a higher priority for that prana principle, which is Brahman in your life. You have to do that a little bit with effort initially till you recognize it is your second nature. You were born with it. It's hiding from you today because your focus is on the Rai principle. Make those adjustments in your life as guided by the scriptures, and you will see the wonder of this realization happening in all of us. We need aids, so Bhagwan's grace is required. We need Guru's guidance. We need all those things, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, all that is required. But all that is required to gain that which you already have. It's not going to come afresh. It's only a self-discovery. It's not a self-creation. Next slide, please. It is in this Brahmana we get an inkling that prana is in essence Brahman. Otherwise, we would not have got it till this point, right? That Brahman, which has become the creator Brahmaji, when associated with Maya, the protector, Vishnu, and when associated with sustenance function, he is Vishnu, and when associated with the dissolver or destroying function, he is Rudra, and therefore is responsible for the pralaya. See, Brahman represented in this picture as Om associates with Maya after having become Maya. Please understand, this only Brahman is the truth. So Maya is also Kalpita only. That I have a power to delude everything is a concept in Brahman only. And in Brahman, even this delusion is only an as though becoming. It's not a real thing. So first what I do, I will myself to think that I can delude. That's my power. So that power, I give it a name called Maya. So I and now my power exist together. Correct? And therefore, associating with my power, I become something. So Brahman plus Maya became the power of Ishvara to create through delusion. The entire Upanishad is telling you the whole creation which you believe is true is only a delusion from the starting principle because there's only one truth. So the delusion comes in three flavors: sattvic flavor, which is knowledge, and the rajasic and tamasic flavor, which is ignorance and action, activity, the kinetic aspect and the static aspect. So Ishvara associated with the sattvic Maya, which is called total subtle, becomes Prajapati or Hiranyagarbha or Brahmaji. And this Brahmaji, which is Hiranyagarbha, when he gets connected to the tamasic aspect of Maya, becomes the total gross, which is called Rai in this particular Upanishad, becomes Virat. Who is Virat? It is Brahman associated with Maya, who gets associated with this total subtle mind, and who gets associated with the total gross. Such a big chain. Unfortunately, whole chain is not visible to us. At most, we can go from Virat to Hiranyagarbha or Brahmaji. Beyond that, we cannot think. The same Hiranyagarbha now associated with the Rajasic Maya, total Rajas, is called Prana. Which Prana is this? This is the energy principle in chapter 1. In this particular chapter, Prana is actually that Omkara Brahman. The veiled reference is got through this particular Brahmana only. Otherwise, we will not know. And this is setting the stage for subsequent discussions in this Upanishad. This Upanishad is a fairly involved Upanishad. We will see all the pieces coming into place only in the last chapter, 6th chapter. We have to be patient. Questions will come, confusions will come, but this picture will give you a good idea. And then he says this Prana and Virat, which is Rai in effect, when they interact, you can start getting many, many, many variations. What are the variations? The luminaries like sun, etc., are created because of that. The reflected illuminations like moon, we saw it. The seasons and months, which we saw in chapter 1. Activities that can be performed in these seasons and months. The kind of activity, one which will take you to prana and one which will take you to rai, which is virat. And as a result of this interaction, there is earth and rain and food and plants, sperm, and therefore offering, and therefore cycle of birth and death. All this is admixture of various level of prana with respect to the rai, which is the material principle. More prana, more enlivened, more sentient. Less prana, it will become dormant, rocks, etc. So the whole cycle is explained with Brahman alone as the underlying principle, which has just transformed itself for its own play. It's playing with itself. Who else can it play with? And it's playing through its power of Maya. Just make believe. But this make believe of Brahman is so powerful that at the individual level we get deluded to believe that it is the truth. And I lose my identity that I am Brahman in this various cycles of creation. And at the level where we are, there's no way we could have got an inkling to that Brahman being me unless the Upanishad points it out to us. Next slide, please. यदा त्वमिवर्ष्यास्ये मा प्राणते प्रजाः आनन्दरूपास्तिष्ठन्ति कामायान्नं भविष्यतीति. Yada, when, tvam, you, avivarsyaste, cause the rain to shower down. Imaha, these, pranate prajaha, creatures which have got breathing ability. Ananda Rupaha, delightful, Tishtanti, remain, Kamaya, as much desired, Annam, food, Bhavishyati, there will be thus. O Prana, when you cause the rain to shower down, these creatures of the glory sit up delighted, hoping that there will be as much food as they desire. In the previous slide, I showed you in the last part that there is the rain and clouds, etc. What Prana is now the creator, sustainer, and dissolver of all the three worlds, and it's also that which is of the nature of knowledge in individual as brightness outside in the gross world. That prana has also become the individual activities within this creation matrix, and the activity which was pointed out in chapter 1 was the process of progeny creation through food becoming Vetas, etc. Same point is brought up here in this particular Brahmana also. Next slide, please. See, what the Upanishad is doing in small doses, we find that we are being exposed to more and more aspects of the truth. But the Rishi is not budging 1 inch from the main Vedantic theory that all creation in the pluralistic world is an error of perception in us. If you have the right vision, everything opens up. If you have the wrong vision, everything is closed for us. That particular sun, which is the prana, is causing the clouds. Therefore, clouds are nothing but prana in another form. The cloud pours down as rain, produces food. Food, therefore, is again only prana, right? We have been told already that creatures are nothing but prana, since they are formed out of the essence of food, nourished by food, maintained by food, and then merged back as food. Therefore, prana himself has become the cloud prana, the rain prana, the food prana, and the creature prana. That's all. What is prana here? That particular Brahman, which was the root cause of even Prajapati. The entire plurality and the various phenomena that we are experiencing because of the plurality, such as rain, germination, growth, harvesting, eating, and growing, are nothing but prana in its various manifestations. That is what this Brahmana is trying to assert now. Next slide, please. भ्रात्यस्त्वं प्राणैकऋषिर्ता विश्वस्य सत्पतिः वयमाद्यस्य दातारः पिता त्वं मातरिश्वतः. Bratya means one without samskaras. Tvam, you, pranaha, O prana, ekarishihi, the first fire, the first consumer of everything. Eta Vishwasya Satpatihi, the true Lord of the universe. Vayam, we, Adyasya, for your sake, Dataraha, givers of oblation, Pita, Father, Tvam, thou art, Matarishvaha, Naha, protect and nourish us as air outside and inside. O Prana, thou art a Vrata, one without initiation, and hence devoid of samskaras. That is what is meant by Vrataha. Thou art the sacred fire called Ekarishihi, the consumer of everything, the firstborn fire. the good Lord of the world. We are the givers of oblations, O Father of the wind, Matarishwar. We are the givers of the oblation. Thou art our Father. Protect us as air outside and air inside. This is the essence of the literal meaning of the Brahmana. Let's see a little bit more deeper to find out how such a meaning comes out. Next slide, please. Vratyah tam pranaha. Hey prana, you are without samskaras. It's like, after all the ideology, you praise somebody and then one Brahmana, you are actually cursing him, saying you don't have any samskaras, what kind of a person here? Meaning there's no traditional upbringing for you. See, tradition starts only after Hiranyagarbha created beings, correct? Tradition means a time element is involved. But prana, which is even the cause of Prajapati, cannot have any traditional value system imbibed in it. It is beyond even traditions. And so this derogatory term called Ratya is converted into an exalted meaning here to say there is no way there can be any tradition binding you like us. We are, because of our cycle of birth and death, we are born with degree of impurities. That is why we are born. And so we have a traditional culture of knowledge being imparted to us and certain samskaras being given to us so that our mind and intellect can become purer. All the samskaras in Sanatana Dharma are meant to purify our mind and intellect, nothing else. Though they look very ritualistic, elaborate, and all kind of confusion is there about them, who is eligible, who is not eligible. I'm not going into the details of how it got degraded, but the essence of those samskaras is meant to only purify our intellect and mind. And when we get purified, we can actually take the path of analyzing our prana and reaching the Brahma Tattvam in us. Otherwise, we cannot. So the Ratya, which is actually a derogatory term, is converted into an exalted meaning in this context. Eka Rishihi means, literally it means the first one who revealed the Vedas. That is the primary seer, which is Hiranyagarbha. First Rishi is Hiranyagarbha, because he is the one who saw the Vedas from the previous Kalpa, the revealer of all Vedas. And because he is the one who became enlightened by the Vedas, he is also known as the one who is the first receiver of knowledge or the first eater of knowledge. That is called first eater or first fire, which is of the nature of knowledge. That is, Prajapati himself offered himself as an oblation into prana and became prana and dry. Basically, Prajapati divided himself into prana and dry principle, which became the foundation to create this entire Jagat and propagate the Jivasam. We saw this in chapter 1. Nothing new is there. Same concept is being extended here. Next slide, please. Vishwasya Satpatihi. The first principle, which is the true Lord of universe as Ishvara. Now he is elevating prana to a level above even Prajapati. He says, you prana or Vishwasya Satpatihi. You are the true Lord of this entire universe because you became associated with Maya to wield the power of Maya and set this entire divine play into motion. You must go back to the slide where the chain of creation was presented to you. There the prana is now going to associate itself as Brahman itself. After having explained that you are the primordial force of this entire creation, the essential essence behind this creation, now the Indriyas are coming back to their own self, Vayam. Vayam meaning the sense organs and mind. They are the one who are giving the eulogy. Who is giving the eulogy? I, Rammohan, am giving the eulogy to Prana, the Brahman. You all must put that I as your own names. Satish Kaushal, Rammurthy, Kumaran, whatever names are there, you have to put it there. I so and so. Now, They are referring to themselves and they are declaring whatever functions I am doing as my individual self today is merely playing a part in this divine cosmic play of prana. Recognize that. Don't try to give undue higher value to your own opinions, views, thoughts, and actions, omissions, and commissions. Understand that you are in this divine play. What is the choice you have? Either recognize the play or blindly follow the play and get trapped into it. That is the only choice. If you play a video game as a video game, nothing happens to you. But if you become the character in that video game, every time you will die, every time you will become reborn, entire life and cycle of that game continues. Those who identify themselves with the particular player in that video game, they are playing more video game, and the one who says that this is a video game, at will he can stop it, right? You all have seen in children. Train your children to understand it as a game and not as a character in the game. You will find they get out of these addictions faster. Vedanta for you in practical sense. You can apply it in your life too. Pita tvam matarishvanaha. Thou art the father, protect us as the wind aspect of prana. Please descend from that Brahma Tattvam and also protect us as wind today so that we can sustain ourselves and reach that level of understanding to become one with you. So Father is the creator, wind is a sustainer. So become our Father, create us and also sustain us is implied in this particular one. Pitatvam Matarishva. Matarishva is a reference to wind.